What's going on, guys? It's Travis and Kyle with the NPCs, and it's time for another quick save. Kyle, today it sounds like we have some interesting news to talk about with some people here with what appears to be a somewhat confirmation, somewhat leak, mostly just a name right now and maybe a few details, but better believe it, it looks like Sony is going to be trying to make another handheld specifically for the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, talk about I'm trying to remember what was it? The Q Light is what Sony has supposedly titled the unit. Um, but it sounds like it's exclusively a streaming console.
Yeah, exactly. So the news was broken by Tom Henderson of Insider Gaming today, who goes on to say that the Q Lite is going to be the next PlayStation handheld and is the next piece of Sony hardware that aims to be yet another piece of hardware that requires the PlayStation 5. Apparently, it's not going to be a cloud streaming device, but will rely on the remote play functionality from the PlayStation 5. But that's a really interesting take on a handheld, given that, well, we know that, of course, streaming your games is really a big thing, especially with all the work that Microsoft has done in Project X Cloud, and of course, the other work before that with the remote streaming that you could have from, say, like your Xbox One, and then, of course, now your Xbox Series consoles. For Sony to get on it, maybe not necessarily a bad idea, but to be something that's more hardware to buy for a PlayStation 5?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, especially with, them already talking about having a price cut to the PlayStation 5 VR after a somewhat lackluster reception. And then now we're talking about a new handheld that is only for streaming on the go when you have access to a Wi-Fi signal. And that entails a whole nother slew of things. Like your PlayStation 5 is going to have to be on basically all the time while you're on the go or in some sort of suspended mode that you'd be able to contact remotely with a signal to turn it on and to be able to access the games that are on it or the one that's currently in the console. Um, I mean, aside from that, that brings up another problem. It is, we had the issue with the price point on the PlayStation VR. What kind of price point are we looking at? I mean, they're talking an 8-inch LCD touchscreen that's 60 frames per second, 1080p. That's eh. But I mean, if they can pull it off for the right price point as more of a device that you carry with you, but it also kind of defeats the purpose of them releasing that gaming grip for phones too.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like you're right. With this being an 8-inch touchscreen, and then of course it's going to have what appears to be like the DualSense controller split in half and then kind of glued to the side. It really does seem more like what Backbone has done for their mobile game controllers, the ones that split
Mhm.
apart and then attach to, say, like an iPhone or an Android device. But imagine, instead of it being an iPhone or an Android device in the middle, it's like you take an iPad mini and basically shove it right in there too. So the size of it is going to be an interesting one to see wielded. But it's an interesting take on them to actually go and do, instead of being a dedicated handheld. I mean, do we think maybe this thing is going to do something else other than just be used for remote play off of a PlayStation 5?
That's the other confusing part. Being an 8-inch touchscreen, is it going to be like I don't know, a tablet that I can use on the side when it's not being used for remote play? I mean, you got to look at Razer's streaming device and Logitech's streaming device. They're both basically tablets when they're not being used as a streaming device. Is Sony going to give us that same access? But then it also brings up the whole price point thing again. I mean, you start bringing features into the mix and what all can it do, and all of a sudden, you know, the Razer Edge is $359. The Logitech G Cloud is $349. That's like $50 less than the cheapest Steam Deck. and the Steam Deck offers you way more as far as like playing capability.
See, and that's what I was about to get into is that the offerings out there for handheld devices, especially handheld devices as they are more tied into playing video games, it's definitely grown, not only with what the Nintendo Switch has done and the unique design that they came out with, but all of the other ones that have sort of mimicked what they've done, especially the Steam Deck. More recently, the Asus ROG, what is it? It's not the Aura, is it? Or Aria? I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was just
Oh
announced.
man.
A lot of people thought it was originally an April Fool's joke, but it's actually a legitimate device that's going to be coming out. But even so, even with that one, like even if we butcher the name, you've still got that one. You've still got like the Ioneo. You've still got GPD
The
devices.
Ally.
Ally, thank you. I knew it started with an
Yeah.
A. I just couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah, I had to
Um,
look it up real quick because I was
yeah.
confused too.
Exactly. So you've got a market that has a lot of these things out there. And it's not to say that we shouldn't see another entry out there anyway, because that just opens up more competition anyway. But
Hmm.
again, we're kind of working off the information we have here now, at least via Insider Gaming and what they've been able to talk about so far. So we're not sure of everything it can do, but it's just kind of weird to figure out where this actually will sit in the overall PlayStation ecosystem. If it's going to be like their take on what the Wii U did, where you have a tablet controller that you can use to play a game without actually having the TV going, or use it as a second screen, like having your mini map up and such, like we saw with some games that were on the Wii U. Um,
That was actually
that
going to
was
be my
that,
next big point,
yeah. Is it going to
actually.
be something like that then, more than anything?
Well, and you think back to the days of the like late 360, early Xbox One, it was something that was kind of abandoned. And you do see it pop up every now and then, but a lot of games were coming out with companion apps that you could do stuff in the app or play mini games in the app, almost like I don't know, back in the day with the Dreamcast VMU, where you could take games on the go and it affected your game that you were actually playing, but it was a part of the game too. Interesting. But why can't we see that again? With this new Sony handheld, the what is it, the Q Lite? Um, I mean, you could have a whole little mini game going for I don't know loading screens if they had to do an install. I mean, you don't see it as much anymore. But what if you had to I don't know there was a hacking mini game and to kind of give you an AR experience, you could use the controller for the mini game.
Yeah, I mean, I will kind of admit here, it's like I feel like that reads too deep into what could happen with this one. I really feel there's
Maybe.
going to be a lot of the emphasis on the second screen capability more than anything, or even that remote play feature set, though. But what we're running into, I think, is what needs to be talked about is how Sony's really handling their gaming ecosystem. And
Hmm.
the idea that right now, for getting the PlayStation 5, it's going to cost you $500. The PSVR 2, we've talked about to death, where it costs you anywhere from $550 to $600, depending on the setup you get, even potentially more, depending on the bundle.
Hmm.
What's it actually going to take, though, for something like this to actually be a worthwhile investment for Sony players, though? Like, what here makes sense, though, as a price point to say, you need to buy this for your PlayStation 5. You need to go and spend the money on this to enhance your experience. Now,
And
it's
I think
it's
that was what
a
I
weird
was
one.
leaning more into. It's got to offer more, I think, at least for me, to enhance my experience for the gameplay than just being an on the go streaming console where I may have limited access to Wi-Fi.
That's going to be the key thing, yeah, is that it's going to need to be more. Exactly. That you,
Hmm.
with your Steam Deck, you can take all these games with you and play them, and you don't have to have an internet connection unless the game you're playing requires it. Like,
Right.
especially if it's a multiplayer game of some type. Now, or of course, the DRM chaos. But you're going to have to offer something more for players to want to go and spend this money to be able to enhance their ecosystem. Now, I know we come across as Xbox fanboys on this, and I think a lot of it is just because we do have a lot invested in their ecosystem, but we've both owned PlayStations over the past. And it's one of those things where it's like, what's the value that's going to be coming out of this that Microsoft may have not already offered or what Nintendo doesn't offer right now? Like, if I want to be able to take, say, like God of War or Horizon on the go, the Steam Deck can already do that, or one of these other competitors in the portable PC gaming space. That's something that we can take out there. Now, it's not every AAA title that we've seen released so far on the PlayStation environment, but it's at least kind of bridging that gap anyway right now, plus the added bonus of other games I can play on it at the same time. Microsoft, on the other hand, has taken the approach, though, is that they've got xCloud or game streaming, where you can play it through your phone or your other mobile device or even on
Hmm.
your computer if you wanted to. And then Nintendo, of course, their whole approach is the hybrid console, one that you can dock in at home and get a 1080p experience or take with you and get a 720p experience running on a battery. I just, while it's cool to see Sony re-entering this part of the market, I'm very confused on to exactly what the proposition value of this is going to be and how Sony could potentially sell something like this if it does make it all the way through to being a released product.
Well, and maybe that's just it. Is this is uh, Sony answering in its usual fashion, where they're going to launch a handheld console that they just don't support in the long run.
Yeah, and that's really what concerns me, especially if the device itself has the haptic controllers, the haptic feedback controllers, the DualSense controller, excuse me, basically split in half and kind of glued to the side. I know that's the most rudimentary way I can put this. The highest level way I can do it is just, cutting the thing in half and gluing it to the sides. But that's about what I feel like they're going to be doing because they've put so much investment into the DualSense technology that it will carry over through the rest of their products for some time. Um, but unless the device does more or the controller part can be separated and you're left with like a PlayStation tablet that
Hmm.
has that might be an Android tablet where its key focus is to play games through your PlayStation 5 to it and then use it as an Android tablet for productivity for other media and such. If it's all going to be one encompassing device that I can't really use otherwise, I don't see how it's going to be successful.
Yeah, and neither do I. For me personally, I see this as another opportunity, for Sony to shine, and I don't know if they'll take it and grasp it. Being as they've already stated that they're planning for it to be a streaming console. Hopefully, it's more than that, like you said, a Android tablet of some sort, or perhaps maybe, like I said, some sort of device you can access remote media to the games in addition to having remote access to the games, maybe as a secondary controller or secondary device while you're at home, and maybe even potentially for Sony to bring back something like their minis that they had from the PSP and PlayStation 3 era.
That's also a possibility. Maybe that it could potentially bridge that gap, especially because of a lot of drive for people to want to play a lot of those older titles that they can't right now unless they have those older consoles in their hands
Hmm.
already. So that might be another proposition point for them. I mean, given of course that remote play may cover some of that, but uh, at
Well,
the end
and
of it though, I
the
don't
minis
know. I
were
mean,
were basically like cell phone games anyway, and
oh, true,
uh,
very
they
true.
were they were so small and pretty much only compatible mostly with the PSP in the first place. And there was a lot of really unique games that were never released anywhere else that I'm surprised Sony just kind of abandoned that project in general. They could have released even a collection of them later on and sold it for money, you know?
Yeah. But one thing we should talk about here is what the rest of this article from Insider Gaming actually makes mention of is that this is not the only piece of hardware in Sony's pipeline right now for the PlayStation environment. It looks like a couple things they make mention of is that it looks like there will be a detachable disk drive PlayStation 5. So if you're one who likes the slimline look of the all digital edition, but you like the feel, of course, of having discs in your hand and being able to use discs to play games, looks like a detachable option may be coming its way like here very soon. We've got Project Nomad, which apparently is a set of wireless earphones that are going to be built specifically for PlayStation. Project Voyager, which is a wireless headset, probably just another generation of their existing wireless headsets, and then the Q Lite as well too.
Holy cow. Yeah, I just Sony's got a lot coming down the pipeline, and it sounds like um, in other articles that other information that may have been leaked, the Q Lite might be releasing before any of this other hardware. So hopefully we get more information sooner than later on the system itself and what it's actually capable of, because I'm interested but wary at this point.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And until that time when the thing drops, I mean, we just have to go off of, this little bit of information we have right now. 1080p, 60 FPS on a handheld device is not the end of the world. That's actually a pretty good medium there, especially because of the screen size itself. And that should be plenty for most people without actually eating into battery life, especially with a high refresh rate screen. And potentially, if it doesn't use an OLED screen, it should be better off too. But with the limited information we have, it just doesn't seem like it would be enough for Sony's environment. But time will always tell that, we could very well be proven wrong. And we just got to wait and see what else could potentially leak out or come out from this. I'm sure there's probably a patent hiding somewhere from Sony that has the DualSense controller system merged with a tablet somewhere, and we're just missing it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it is one of those wait and see scenarios. But I feel like, being that the information was so explosive so quickly, I don't think we'll be waiting too long.
Yeah, probably not. If this thing is truly in its QA phase where they're actually starting to work out the bugs and kinks before they start making a near final production model, then yeah, it's very possible we could hear something about this before holiday 2023, or maybe even as soon. I mean, we got summer stuff coming up that could be announced as well too. But more likely than not, I bet you it's probably gonna be the first half of next year that we'll hear more on it.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. But with that, that's it for the Quick Save for today. So be sure, of course, if you liked watching this episode of the Quick Save, be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. So anytime we drop new content here on YouTube, you can immediately get it and start watching. And of course, comment along on all the different things we're talking about as well too. Of course, if you want to catch us as well too on our podcast, you can go and do so to check out the weekly news roundup. That's over on our homepage at anchor.fm/the-NPCs-podcast. You can subscribe there on your favorite podcast platform of choice and listen along with us as we go through the week's news. New episodes published every Saturday morning. With all that, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We will catch you all next time.
Bye-bye.